I spent my whole damn life in the city. I could go for broke, but the capital is in me. I spent my whole damn life in the city. Anywhere I go, DC's coming with me. I spent my whole damn life in the city. I could go for broke, but the capital is in me. I spent my whole damn life in the city. Anywhere I go, DC's coming with me. I spent my whole damn life in the city. I could go for broke, but the capital is in me.
Welcome, everyone, to District Divided, a DC Sports Podcast. More specifically, a Washington Commanders podcast. I am Amit. That is K-Dot. And today's episode, we've got some passing game coordinators on the offensive side in Brian Johnson and the defensive side in Jason Simmons. So we're going to talk about both hires, what it means for the team. And then it's Super Bowl week. Super Bowl predictions. Chiefs, Niners, Sunday. Very much looking forward to the game. Should be a fun one. So we're going to give you our predictions. Go to the comment mailbag as we always do after the pod. But before we begin the episode, if you could please like the video, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell, comment as you always do, and K-Dot?
Share this shit. Share it. Share the shit.
Share the shit. We greatly appreciate it. So
if you see me spaz out like I did just a minute ago, it's because they're repaving the entire out front of the house, and my entire chair and everything just shook, and it takes me out of it for a second.
Yeah, well, you know, the thing that I really appreciate about you is your ability to go navigate through that and produce an amazing episode as we're about to do. So why don't we go ahead and get into it? So Jason Simmons, starting on the defensive side of the ball. Jason Simmons has been hired as our defensive pass game coordinator, maybe even DB's coach. It depends on where you're getting your information from. I suspect he will also be DB coach. He's got extensive work experience in the NFL, which is a stark contrast from our prior secondaries coach, which is great. So we got some adults in the room. He's worked with the Green Bay Packers for some time, where he actually worked with Joe Whitt Jr., now our defensive coordinator, as a reminder to all of you. Worked with the Carolina Panthers for a couple of years. Same thing with the Las Vegas Raiders, which is where we got him from. And now he's here as our defensive pass game coordinator. K-Dot, what do you make of the move? Do you like it? Do you love it? Do you hate it?
I'd say on surface level, I like it. Once again, with any of this stuff, outside of the big three, right? So like the what we would consider the big three here would probably be front office guy, the GM, head coach, and because depending on whether or not you go offense or defense with the head coach, you'd say the opposite coordinator, right? And if I'm looking at the big three, okay, I think those are slam dunks. But now that we're getting to this nitty gritty of where it is that I was most pressed as far as the head coach position and what's happening with these coaching staff, right? I dig it. I dig the experience he has. I dig the fact that he has the experience with Joe Whitt back in Green Bay. I dig that if you look at certain aspects of especially young DBs that he's worked with, they've had success. I know in 2020, Rookie of the Year defensively, I know that everybody in Washington was all like Cam Curl. But then you also had this aspect of Jeremy Chin as far as the one-to-one comparison as far as a safety. And then even with the Raiders just now, he's pass game coordinator on defense. And as far as passing defense went with the Raiders, they were top 10. So there is an aspect of okay, here's a guy that knows what's happening as far as on the defense. He has experience with some of the other dudes that have been here, like in Joe Whitt. So that communication aspect of it, hopefully that's a good thing. Hopefully what we're seeing on paper translates into success on the field. I mean, it's just it's hard for you to make a ruling on any of this until they start fucking playing, right?
Yeah. And so I just wanted to also jump in and say other people he worked with in Green Bay. So of course he's got experience with Joe Whitt Jr. And so a lot of the hirings you end up seeing most oftentimes are motivated by connections. But in this situation, again, we're talking about accomplished people here. So it's not just the buddy hires we saw with Ron Rivera, where it was well, did they even do anything, or were they that good at their job? There's no question about it here. So in Green Bay, he worked with Darnell Savage. He worked with Jair Alexander. He worked with Kevin King. He's got a good track record, like K-Dot was mentioning, even with Jeremy Chin and younger guys. So here, what does that mean for Emmanuel Forbes? What does that mean for Quan Martin? What does that mean for Benjamin St. Juste? Cam Curl, do we keep him? Kendall Fuller, do we keep him? What does it mean for free agent signings? What you're seeing as an overarching theme, K-Dot, and I'm curious if you agree with me here, is getting as many diverse minds together as well that have experience in the league and are able to make multiple players sort of work in a system. We're going to get to that with the Brian Johnson hiring in just a moment. But what do you make of that idea of just like getting as many experienced people in the building as possible?
Double-edged sword, depending on exactly, like, I think that's why you hear me rely more on the word communication and like connection as far as like from a collaborative aspect. There does, to a certain degree, and I think that's going to be more on the Brian Johnson side than it is on the Jason Simmons side, is every once in a while you might be concerned that there are too many cooks, right? There's too many guys that might have experience that transcends even what was being asked of them here in Washington, that might have a higher opinion of things of the way that they're supposed to happen than maybe they don't necessarily agree or fall in line with what the main guy is saying. I think
Sure.
there's a little bit of that, but that's where I go back to relying on, all right, where the community. So I guess it's the 3 C's, right? Connection, communication, collaboration. The 3 C's.
Yeah.
It's so stupid.
You just giggled at that for no reason whatsoever.
I don't know. It's just, maybe
The 4th C is construction, which is going on for him right now. Please continue.
or the shrooms. I'm still probably high on last night.
Yeah,
But
definitely
regardless,
consider that a C. Go ahead.
you caught me dead in my fucking tracks.
Yeah.
So yeah, but the thing is, like, you start looking at, all right, where are those connections themselves? Like when we're talking about that part of it, when I'm my only concern as far as like there are too many cooks. You need to have a strong leadership presence that really tells everybody this is what we're doing. You're following me. And to have guys with enough experience and have a guy who can drop his ego down enough to listen to the ideas that people have and for them to feel heard.
Mhm.
And as long as you do that, then it can work. And I think when you have Dan Quinn and everything that he said during everything he's been doing in the media, what you hear about as far as the interview process, he is striving to do things differently than he did before. And what is extremely important to him is having all those ideas kind of marinating around. So, I mean, the more I hear about these guys being hired with experience, and then not only experience, but in the case of Jason Simmons, player experience, he was a player, which is also important to me, then like that to me should only mean good things if everybody's kind of learned from their lessons and knows what to do.
Yeah, and so K-Dot, I'm gonna make my prior point and maybe a touch clearer. So Dan Quinn talked about being explosive, being physical as the team identity, right?
Mhm.
And how it's important to remove the thinking from the players when they're on the field so that they could be both those things, right? We saw a lot of thinking happening, and we talked about how complicated the scheme was with Del Rio last season, and secondaries coach didn't necessarily have an NFL pedigree about him.
Yeah.
So here, when you were adding extra cooks, just to counter the too many cooks in the kitchen sort of comment there, is that Joe Whitt can now focus on just making sure the defense is properly coordinated, or that he's able to focus on a game plan because he trusts Jason Simmons knowing exactly what he wants. So he doesn't need to think about that aspect of it. Dan Quinn trusts Joe Whitt. He doesn't need to think about that aspect of it. So it's making things easier at every level so that you only have a handful of things to do versus the many, many things you would have to do otherwise, is the way I'm thinking about this.
It's the do your job approach. Yeah,
Exactly.
you're right. I mean, that's so like, if we think back in the Washington lore, Joe Gibbs, our most successful coach, arguably the greatest coach in the history of football. You know what he was known for, probably more than any other thing, as far as when it came to his staffs? They were the largest in the league. They were huge. The amount of dudes, and then the amount of guys that ended up becoming head coaches off of his staffs, like defensively, the amount of fucking coaches we used to have in there, Richie Pettibone, like, if you want to go through a fucking reference page and look at the amount of coaches that Joe Gibbs used to have, and it was one of those things where it was like everybody needs to find out and be the best at the thing that they do. Be the absolute best at the thing that they do. And to be able to coach these guys up through that aspect. And holistically, when everybody's doing what it is they're supposed to do, hyper-focused, you can then get to where you need to be. And the guys at the top can really focus on the big picture. It's a good thing that you don't have people spreading themselves too thin. And if that's something you've also heard Dan Quinn say is his number one takeaway coming out of Atlanta, is that he does feel as though he spread himself a little too thin. So it's a good thing. It is a good thing if you're talking about these guys, especially Dan, are clearly learning from their mistakes or the pitfalls last time. And what he's doing is trying to build the all-stars cast of coaches that he possibly build to make sure that everybody can kind of focus on what it is they need to be doing.
Which is exactly what you've been harping on this entire offseason, is bring in a coach that is a leader and is able to get an all-star coaching staff. And we will see how that ends up turning out. But so far, so good. Off to a good start, at least from what we can see. So that's the defensive side of the ball. Let's go ahead and flip the script. Let's talk about the offensive side of the ball. So Brian Johnson, former Philadelphia Eagles, initially quarterbacks coach, and then offensive coordinator for just one season. And of course, we know the season the Philadelphia Eagles had, where it started off great, but they kept talking about how they needed to work on some things, or they just needed to gel together. It didn't quite work out. So Brian Johnson out after 1 year over there. But when you look at his track record, it's also pretty good. So he's worked with Dak Prescott in the past in college. He's worked with Jalen Hurts, and Jalen Hurts during his MVP-esque season, Brian Johnson was the QB's coach. So like, he's working obviously as close as you can with the guy. And now he's going to be over here with Kliff Kingsbury. He's going to be our passing game coordinator on offense. What do you make of that move, Kate? How do you like that one?
This kind of like what we were saying with this, with the Jason Simmons thing, is like, here you have a guy who can really focus on what it seems to be the thing that he's best at, which is being well, I don't know. You know, I'm gonna
Go for it. Yeah,
pull
that's
back for a
fine.
second. I've been very positive about all the coaching hires and everything. Brian Johnson, the first one that, like, hang on,
You're
what's
like,
happening? So like, if I'm being completely honest, like, all right, look, there's an aspect of what he was able to do with developing Jalen Hurts that's just, it's really cool. We all saw what Jalen Hurts was early and the way that he progressed up until this year. It's crazy that you could say that, okay, you were a first-time NFL offensive coordinator and finished with a top 10 offense, and everybody said that you're a failure. It's weird, right? Like, it's the threshold for what is acceptable. What does that look?
well, the look is, I don't think it was that weird. Did you
What?
actually think it was weird that there was this idea that the Philadelphia offense failed? Because I thought that made sense.
Well, let me say this. This is what I'm
Sure.
saying. Is like, if you're looking at things in a vacuum, for a first-time offensive coordinator, coming off of what I believe to be one of the hardest things to do in sports, which is what I always gave the Eagles credit for, or took into account when we talked about in this season, which is that Super Bowl hangover. You lost.
Right.
And usually a lot of times there is a retooling. Most teams are not anywhere near as good as they were when they lose the Super Bowl that year after.
See the Atlanta Falcons with Dan Quinn.
So like, even though no, Dan's actually the exception to the rule in that sense.
I don't think so. If you look
they
at the
went
numbers,
they went deep into the playoffs. They lost to the Eagles that ended up winning the Super Bowl that following year. The year after they lose, they think they go 10-6, and they lose in the divisional round, if I'm not mistaken.
right? But I'm talking about the step down in terms of coordinator, like losing Kyle.
Oh, losing the coordinators.
Yeah, that's
like,
what I'm
yeah,
referring
okay,
to.
gotcha,
that was
gotcha,
the
gotcha.
angle. Yeah,
Gotcha. Got it. All right, so you have the Eagles jettison their coordinators, or not jettison the coordinator. They get head coaching gigs. They elevate Brian Johnson, which is the thing that you're supposed to do, right? Look internally, find the guy that you think works best to continue the system and keep him going. And once again, Nick Sirianni being the offensive-minded head coach he was, whatever, blah, blah, blah. But the thing of it is that if I'm looking at it just in a vacuum, Philadelphia's offense was still fucking great in the grand scheme of things. If you're comparing to anybody across the course of the league, they finished top 10. It's still disappointing because, look, if you look at the way that it happened, his game management, if we're looking at Brian Johnson, was not great. Play calling was not great. The aspect of, you could see the Jalen Hurts was upset at certain points this season. You could definitely see that they were almost losing the entire wide receiving room by the end of the season. The only thing that I don't know, and I don't think anybody's written about to a certain degree that I can clearly understand, is what went wrong exactly, right? Like, you can look and say, this dude is a first-time offensive coordinator. There are going to be growing pains. The idea you still finished top 10 and got panned, to me, is like, well, that seems like a guy that if you really believed in him, you give him some more opportunities to grow. Or was it just him?
That's a good
like,
point.
I don't know what the case is with it, but I would just say that, like, I kill for the offense that Philadelphia had last season.
yeah.
Who
But
wouldn't?
but it's also there's an insane level of talent there, as we do know. Let's be real. One of the best offensive lines in football. Right. AJ Brown, Devontae Smith. Devontae Smith is a number 2 is a luxury. Jalen Hurts
the
at QB,
expectations are
DeAndre
clearly
Swift.
different.
Of
Yeah.
course, right.
Yeah.
What I wanted to say, just from the Washington side of things, right? In keeping with the theme of just collecting as many minds as possible. When I see the Kliff Kingsbury move, when I see the Brian Johnson move, they have worked with an array of quarterbacks that have been good in the NFL.
Yeah.
And so I think the idea to me, K-Dot, is that they have sensed the theme of quarterback is the most important position. We've got the number 2 overall pick. So that is an option for quarterback if we choose to do that. Maybe it's someone in free agency. This front office, it may be a bit of a new field. We've talked about it being unconventional. We'll see what they end up choosing to do at the position. But both Kliff and Brian know what looks good, know what the traits are. And so I think when evaluating the position and evaluating these college kids, they can probably get a sense of, okay, this kind of player is what we're looking for. So the best case scenario is that Brian Johnson, Kliff Kingsbury, Dan Quinn, Adam Peters all go, we like this player. And the likelihood of success, in my eyes, with that many people around, much higher than it normally would be. That's sort of my thinking behind it.
I'm not gonna. I don't necessarily disagree with anything you're saying. So they hire Brian Johnson to be the passing game coordinator. He's not the quarterback's coach. He's not the offense coordinator.
We actually retained Tavita Pritchard. I'm glad you mentioned that.
Right.
So yeah,
because that was going to be the next point, was that they retained Tavita Pritchard, who was who was a hot candidate. And that's the other. I think that's the other thing that kind of makes me excited, is that all these guys that we're hiring, at least to some degree, in league circles, were the hot candidate at some point. And like, this gives an opportunity to maybe retool and figure out to work on what it is they need to work on. I saw somebody call this the second chance coaching staff for Dan Quinn, which is okay. I mean, most guys got fired before they got hired anywhere, so I don't know if we want to go with that narrative. But if you're bringing him in for passing game coordinator, I don't know exactly what that looks like here compared to other places. I feel like they're just naming things nowadays.
Yes.
Right. So like, if you have him in here because, okay, you think Philadelphia excelled with making sure, there's some things that Philadelphia I thought did fairly well. Making sure that they fed the ball to certain receivers at certain times, making sure that the playmakers got some opportunities at times. How it went wrong as far as sometimes the play calling, sometimes Jalen Hurts not doing the thing that he's supposed to do, whatever. But you can see there were certain mechanisms within the offense. You're like, okay, passing wise, I like certain things that they were doing. And maybe if he can hone in and focus on that and have that be the thing, it allow Kliff Kingsbury to think about bigger terms as far as the way the offense itself is supposed to work in play calling, and not worry about, hey, let's make sure Terry's in here on this, or give this guy a breather, or make sure we force feed the ball to this guy. I don't know how they're going to break down on Sundays.
You know what? I mean, obviously we're just fans, and we're sort of figuring it out as we go, as well as along with the team. But this move, to me, I think less about the title. And I think that goes back to, I think you had mentioned that very briefly just then. And it's much more, we want this mind in the room. We want this person helping our offense out in whatever capacity. So we'll name him passing game specialist. Totally fine. Or passing game coordinator, whatever title. It doesn't matter. There are certain people, I think, even in your classic 9-to-5s, that they are just so good in your eyes that you just are like, I don't care what your title is. We just need you in the building. Exactly. And I think that's sort of what's happening with Brian Johnson. There's the added element that he's coming from Philadelphia. That's another NFC East hire. So now we've got Dan Quinn, Joe Whitt coming from Dallas. We've got Brian Johnson coming from Philadelphia. That's more personnel information, for example, that can actually help on the defensive side if he ends up chatting with Joe Whitt, Dan Quinn, which I would suspect he would. So there's also that element of it as well. I think they want Brian Johnson in the building. I think it helps with the quarterback discussion. That's how I view it. In terms of how he actually did as offensive coordinator, fine. I think as quarterback's coach, he did very well, at least when you align the years for Jalen Hurts and then how he did. But it's also a wait and see move, right? I think it's good, though. I do think it's good.
I think you've heard me criticize the idea that Washington has not been a place in which good ideas can foster and grow, and people will apply those good ideas and communicate with each other about them, or challenge someone on this idea, right? What you hear about from Kyle Shanahan or the McVays is, okay, you think we should do this, why should we do this? And if you don't come correct, I'm a blast ass, right? Like I think there is, to me, the only thing is that, like, if you're gonna build it this way, everybody needs to have their clearly defined roles, their jobs, know exactly what it is they're doing, and feel good about the things they're doing, and feel as though they're good at it. And then beyond that, once you get that confidence to feel as though you're good at that one job that you're doing, to be able to have an environment that you can be open to talking and delivering ideas and having guys be receptive to hearing at least what you have to say. I do think sometimes there can be way too many people with too many voices and it kind of gets lost in some stuff. I want to make sure that we know and that everybody knows that the most important person on the team right now, as far as the head of the team, is Dan Quinn. And I want everyone to make sure that they're supporting Dan Quinn in what it is that he's doing. And that includes Adam Peters. Adam Peters is the guy that's that selects Dan Quinn and being, this is the dude that's going to be what we strive to be. That's what Adam Peters' job is to do, is to take that bigger picture approach and do this. But if you're going to build that, then he needs to be the guy that everybody supports, understands that this is what he's doing. And this way he clearly defined, we want to be X kind of team. And you've gone through it. We want to punch people in the fucking mouths. We want to do fast, hard playing. I just want to make sure that everyone that comes in here doesn't have too many ulterior motives and can play nice and can work towards the final goal overall. Not be a one-man army, which is something that you hear more is like what the Eric Bieniemy situation is. I'm not blaming Eric completely. That was an environment fostered by the head coach.
Yes. Right. And so just to speak to the Adam Peters, Dan Quinn relationship, it's for those that have worked in software or for really any sort of product client relationship, it's going to be Dan Quinn is sort of your head guy, right? Where he's like, I want the following things. And it's up to Adam Peters to figure out what those requirements are. That's his job. What kind of running back do you want? What kind of defensive lineman do you want? What kind of linebacker do you want? Okay, I want these things. Got it. And then it's Adam Peters' job to figure out who those types of people are.
To get the best in the field.
To get the best on the field. So he is building the product based on Dan Quinn's vision. So that's the important part. And these coaching hires are doing much the same. It's not just the personnel side of things, like the player personnel side of things. It's also going to be the coaching. That's goes all the way back to making sure you don't have to think when you're on the field. It's making sure that stuff is very clear. And from that macro view, K-Dot, I like what I'm seeing. We'll see if it turns out well. There could be too many cooks. We'll find out. Any final thoughts on these moves before we talk about the Super Bowl?
Yeah, I think overall, while this is something that I've been super excited about as far as coaching staff, and what I'm loving is the fact that we have pull because some of these guys are hot candidates. So that means that we're pulling from some of the best pools to get guys in here. This is where that Rolodex is taken into account. But you will not see me get entirely too high or too low about anything until I start seeing the roster take shape.
Right. There. Exactly. So there's a long way to go. We still got free agency. We still got the combine, then the draft. And so we'll figure all that out. And we'll even do an episode where we go, okay, we got a bunch of new hires. What are some of the free agent connections that could maybe help some of the guys on the team figure out the system quicker? That's stuff that can also occur here. What was that like?
Another good thing, but overwhelming thing is the connections. You ever see It's Always Sunny? Charlie on the board, drawing the
yes, pretty popular gift these days. Yeah,
that to me is like, all right, you want to do that? Like the Caleb Williams conversation fucking alone is enough to make your head explode, right? Like a quarterback.
Oh, that's why. By the way, that's why I very consciously chose K-Dot not to mention names when it came to the QBs in the draft upcoming.
But it's all good stuff, right? You want dudes to give you the flexibility that when there's a conversation, be like, all right, so what do we know about Jaden Daniels? Oh, well, hey, I know this dude. This is what I'm saying. Like, yeah, this is good. These are all good things. It's just we got to do a podcast and some research. It's a lot of work.
Yeah, that is true. There are a lot of connections to look at, so we're going to try and figure it all out and serve it up to you guys. But why don't we go ahead and talk about two teams that are still playing this NFL season in the Super Bowl in Las Vegas. It's the 49ers. It's the Chiefs. It should be a really fun game. I hope it's a fun game. I hope it's not a blowout in either direction, and I hope it's enjoyable. But we got the Chiefs, who people said it was a down year, and then K-Dot goes, no, this man's a god. Don't worry about it. And he's been right all the way through. Kansas City has just been steamrolling through the playoffs. And then you got the 49ers with Mr. Irrelevant, who still gets an insane amount of hate, still can't quite figure out why. Lead two comebacks for a 49ers team where Kyle Shanahan's sort of known for choking. So it's a very interesting Super Bowl. The Niners are favored by 2.5 points over your god, Patrick Mahomes, and the Kansas City Chiefs. Over under is 47.5. K-Dot, let's do this like we do a Commanders game. Need a score I need a winner, and I need a player of the game. Go ahead. Floor is yours.
This is a toughie. So I grew up, before I was a Commanders fan, I was a 49ers fan. Or before I was willing to admit that I was a Commanders fan,
Okay.
I was a 49ers fan. Still the first moment I ever cried watching football was the catch 2.0. Terrell Owens in the playoffs, wild card, Steve Young to him, across the end zone, against the Packers. Fuck the Packers. I can't pick against the God. And I think if I'm really ranking each unit in this game, if I rank each offense, each defense, each special teams, what I'm coming out with is my favorite unit in this game is the Kansas City Chiefs defense. And if I add that to the Patrick Mahomes-ness of it, I'm picking the Chiefs. But there's a part of me in my heart that thinks this could be like a Christian McCaffrey go off, 152 touchdowns, just the white boy, rumble, white boy, rumble. I'm choosing the Kansas City Chiefs. 2017. Mahomes takes it. It's a low-scoring affair, very defense heavy.
Okay.
I think maybe the Kansas City Chiefs score early because, Andy Reid and the script, usually a good combination, and then things just get really brutal for a while.
Okay. 20-17. Kansas City Chiefs. Can you name your player of the game one more time, please? It's gonna be Pat.
Isaiah Pacheco.
Oh, Pacheco. Okay. Excuse me. I was just, even entering this pod, I was like, man, K-Dot is going to predict
There's a case to be made.
That line for
Taylor Swift, but I'll digress.
Is Pacheco your Super Bowl MVP? Because there can be a difference between player of the game and Super Bowl MVP.
That's fair. That's a good way of looking at it. I'm gonna say I'm not gonna separate them.
Okay.
I'm gonna say the player of the game is your Super Bowl MVP, and I'll say it's
cool.
Pacheco. He breaks one at the end, and it just like his stats looks insane.
He is still an underrated running back, which is crazy because whenever he always gets this like sprinting start relative to his peers. I don't know how he does it, and then he just seeks contact out. He loves it. He like legitimately seems to love it.
He loves it, and the thing is that as a owner of, that sounds so wrong. As a dude who had Isaiah Pacheco on a lot of my fantasy teams, it wasn't until fairly recently that Andy Reid decided, hey, we're just going to run him in the red zone. We're just going to run him. We're just going to keep running him. It was a lot of like, all right, we're going to spell it for Charles Edward-Helaire for a while, and it just kind of gets him out of rhythm. You just got to let that boy run.
Yeah, I mean, so that's another example of draft status not really mattering. Clyde, a certain type of running back, and then Pacheco comes in, and all of a sudden it's his. I think fun fact there, he was, 11 or 12 picks behind Brock Purdy in the same draft? It's something like that. He also a late round pick in that same draft. So I'll keep it a buck with all of you. I hate the idea that the Chiefs are developing this dynasty already at such a young age for Mahomes. He's only been starting for 6 years. This is his 4th Super Bowl. It's honestly insufferable. Okay, it's a prediction, so I will give you my prediction that I believe the Chiefs will win this game because the same reasons that K-Dot had mentioned. It's Patrick Mahomes in a space where this team has done it before. They're comfortable. They have their routine. I don't think they're phased. And they're playing in Las Vegas. It's a familiar field for them and a familiar environment. And he does really well over there. So I think they're going to be fine. So I've got the Kansas City Chiefs winning 28-17. I actually think it's going to be convincing because of the Chiefs defense. The same thing that Kate already mentioned. People just think Mahomes and they don't think about the defense. The defense is really good. L'Jarius Sneed, Trent McDuffie, those guys are, and Chris Jones, of course, makes that one or two plays where he's just so impactful. And then there's Nick Bolton, of course. So 28-17 Chiefs, but I am a hater. And what I really want is the 49ers to win. Also because the Brock Purdy stuff is so annoying, and just an entire offseason of people being like, told you so, when he has played an amazing season. It's just, I just don't want to have to go through that, and it's going to happen. So what I would love is the 49ers to win 31-28. Brock Purdy leads a game-winning touchdown drive. McCaffrey can run it, I don't care. But a game-winning touchdown drive as time expires. I think that would be awesome. But I've got the Chiefs 28-17. Patrick Mahomes, your Super Bowl MVP, my player of the game. That's what I would say.
I feel like it's skewing that way. There's overwhelming money headed towards everybody thinking the Chiefs are going to win this. And I think it's one of those cases where So I've been over here screaming, "Don't pick against Patrick Mahomes. Don't pick against Patrick Mahomes,"
Mm-hmm.
and everybody lost a fuck ton of money the last 2 games picking against Patrick Mahomes.
Yep.
And now everybody's scared straight. And
Mm-hmm.
now I'm over here like, all right, well, this
You just don't
this
like
stuff is
being on the
matchup.
same side as the public.
I hate being considered a contrarian, but I might just be a contrarian.
You are a contrarian, and actually,
I don't wanna be-
your explanation alone
I don't be fucking
don't
labeled.
like being described. Like you are just, yeah, you're nailing the entire persona and identity of it.
It's because I'm a hipster, man. I'm 30. I'm about to be 35 years old. I'm an LCD sound system guy. I like flannel and beards and glasses. You can tell. Like yeah. And when everybody hops on the trend, it ain't cool no more.
Go over to the comment mailbag where we have a number of comments, and we appreciate you guys as always for commenting. We're going to begin with
always.
Okay, you know what? District Divided. I always appreciate you guys and your comments, no matter what they are. Greatly appreciate them. Begin with Patriot Clips. Shout out Patriot Clips. Kliff Kingsbury ran 88% shotgun in Arizona. He ran shotgun 91% in 2021 alone. That's way more than Eric Bieniemy. And there was a nice little conversation between him and King of PKF. Shout out. And it's literally a back and forth where King of PKF goes, you can run shotgun. You can run shotgun, just run the ball as well. Patriots Clip, you can, but Kingsbury doesn't. Majority of the rush yards came from Kyler. And then there's a James Conner comment about having a decent year under Kliff and doesn't require a 1,600-yard rusher. So it goes back and forth. And then ultimately ends up with Patriot Clip saying, I had my heart set on I formation, a 1,500-yard back or a combo backfield. I'll get over it. Shotgun it is. To which King of PKF goes, I'd love the I formation being used a lot more as well, personally. But I also understand, like you do, I believe it's never run in college, and most OCs don't value it much anymore. And it is a good point because the game has changed quite a bit. We see a lot more shotgun these days that happens in the league, K-Dot.
Yeah, I mean, we're gonna talk more about the air raid offense as time goes on because the air raid is more than just a playbook; it's almost like a life philosophy of the way in playing football. I would say that a big portion of the Kyler Murray being in shotgun, yes, the air raid relies on shotgun a lot. There's no getting around that. Yes, running plays in the air raid system are usually fairly limited because, as my criticism for Eric Bieniemy is, you're limited in how many types of runs you can do from shotgun. It kind of telegraphs things. So you got to kind of you want to work off of play action stuff, but that isn't necessarily the big thing in the air raid, right? The big thing about the shotgun though is that Kyler Murray was all of 5'7", and you can't see over the offensive line if you have him under center with that many fucking passing concepts that he's got to be able to see. So you need lanes in order for him to see. So I think that yes, there is going to be a lot more shotgun than maybe even I, in the grand scheme of things, would love to see. But I think the prevalence of it to that extent was a lot due to the limitations of Kyler Murray. Not the limitations, but just because of Kyler Murray's physical stature.
Because of the physical traits. Fair enough. And then we go over to Biggie Steve 6973. We need Derrick Henry. I mean, Derrick Henry, one of the greatest to ever do it at the running back position. Do you think we need Derrick Henry, K-Dot?
No, especially not if the offense is coming is what I think it is, then no.
Yeah, just because again, and this is running out of shotgun, which as of right now, we'll see what the offense ends up becoming. It is February 9th, right now.
I don't think what we happen in
way to go.
Arizona is what you're going to see here. I think there will be a lot of different wrinkles in this one compared to what it was in Arizona. If I had to
Very
guess.
much looking forward to it. We go over to Just B 327. Shout out Just B. This is the, I think, second time, maybe even third time commented. You guys are great. I love the show. Great format and funny. I usually don't watch podcasts from beginning to end, but I watch yours. Keep up the good work. And 3 likes there too. Just be 327. Thank you very much for that comment. We really appreciate it. And we hope that you are listening to this very moment right now as well as you go through from beginning to end.
See, guys, more comments like that.
There's nothing wrong with a little divisive opinion here and there, K-Dot. Put yourself in another man's shoes now and then.
I think that's why the whole too many cooks thing. I'm feeling like dictatorship might be the way to do things.
Oh, you think? I've known that about you for quite some time. We go over to Earl Bruce. Shout out Earl Bruce. I enjoyed the symmetry between Harris, Peters, and Quinn at the press conference. Many Super Bowls have been won by second-time coaches, so I have no problem with this being Quinn's second opportunity. Coaches learn in between opportunities, and I think Quinn will be better the second time around. How do you guys think that this will turn out? K-Dot, why don't you go ahead?
You know, I'm a fan, man. Like once again, I won't be able to make And even if this roster gets into place, which is where I only feel comfortable making rulings on anything, that would still be so premature because there's so many question marks when it comes to this team. All I'm saying is that, like, overall, we are doing things in a way that we have not done in Washington as long as I can remember.
Yes.
And that to me is good.
And
that to me gives you a better opportunity than anything we've had.
Once again, I think this is going to go well. Also because the NFC to me is not that strong. So I think there's an opportunity to be able to be good on this side, on this conference, in this conference.
Quickly.
I eventually got there. Yeah, quickly. I really do. And I do believe in Dan Quinn. I do believe that there is alignment, that aligned vision that Adam Peters has talked about, that Dan Quinn mentioned. And I also like, again, you had mentioned it, Earl, that symmetry between Harris, Peters, and Quinn at the press conference. It's one thing to just sit there all together. It's another thing to very actively look like you're on the same page. And it certainly looked like it to me. So
I'm fucking, if I'm being completely honest, I fucking love everything that's happening. You guys know I love everything that's fucking happening. You watch any of these episodes, you know they're doing everything that I wanted us to do for a very fucking long time. So this to me is where the stakes get raised, or whether or not I'm right in the way to build a fucking team, because they're doing it the way that I want to do it.
I have a quick follow-up question for you there, K-Dot. Was your camera shaking because of you and your passion there, or was it because of the construction that's happening right now, or both? Are you muted?
No, it was me.
Okay, that's what I thought. Cool. That's the correct answer, by the way. Earl Bruce has another comment. I saw that. Shout out Earl Bruce. The Eagles will play the Friday season opener in Brazil. This was big news, K-Dot. So we have the Thursday opener, and then we got a Friday game in Brazil, in Sao Paulo. Will their opponent be the Commanders, is the question from Earl. I will start this one and say there is a 0% chance it's us. I would also say 0% chance it is Dallas. There is a 0% chance it is the New York Giants, because I think NFC East or any divisional home game is far too valuable to suddenly put in a different neutral site, basically. So I would say it's not going to be an NFC East team. I could see it being an AFC team like the Jaguars or the Browns. I could see it being the Packers even, but for it to be a divisional opponent and then you lose a game at Lincoln Financial Field, I would be livid if I were the Philadelphia Eagles. I would be livid if I were an Eagles fan. So I don't see that happening, K-Dot. What about you?
Is it a home game for the Eagles?
It is a home game for the Eagles. So we don't know. We know the Eagles are playing. We know that they're the home team. So we don't know who their opponent is going to be.
So I'm looking through the history of every international series game that they've had since they've done this.
I don't think there's been a divisional game.
I don't see one.
Because it's too, I am of the belief it is way too important a game to just put abroad while you're expanding. You know, you're trying to get fans worldwide. I get that. But I think as of right now, that is just too important a game to put abroad.
Yeah, everything that I'm saying, it's like, whoa, no, take the back.
Was it the Jaguars?
Mexico Chiefs Chargers.
Okay.
That's happened.
Okay. So I guess there is.
It has happened. It's not often, but I would say that, like, I think when it comes to that, I wouldn't necessarily be shocked. I'd be shocked if it was the Cowboys. I would not be shocked if it was us or the Giants. I just think that there are levels to this.
Well, but also putting a team with a brand new head coach, the very first games in Brazil, like I don't know.
I don't know. Josh Harris wants to expand the fucking reach of the team and his new ownership.
Did you imagine the owners meeting? He's like, "Hey, I know you guys are looking for an opponent. We'll do it." Actually, hey, from our perspective, why not? Neutral field. We don't have to go to the lake.
Dan Quinn might love that shit.
Yeah,
feels very.
Let's fucking go.
You think Dan Campbell's saying none of that? No. Fuck that.
We don't have to go to the link for a year. Hey, I wouldn't hate that. Then we go over to Blood Clot. Shout out Blood Clot. OG. Earl Bruce is an OG too, by the way. Shout out.
Yeah.
What I love about the press, we're back on Blood Clot. What I love about the presser was witnessing the obvious collaboration. So we're striking a bit of a theme here, K-Dot. Adam Peters is new to the job. Josh Harris is new to the job. No one is pretending to know all the answers. That is very refreshing. They are all leaning on each other with one goal in mind, and that's to win games. I love how Dan Quinn wants to put egos aside and win together. And he's right. This type of collaboration is an anomaly. It doesn't happen often. This could lead to something special. I feel like Kliff Kingsbury is the young-minded coach all the fans wanted, barring his head coaching record. The air raid offense is something we needed last season. EB's route spacing was terrible, and air raid spreads out the defense. That is true. The spacing sometimes was like, what on earth? So far, I'm feeling optimistic. Hindsight, Ben Johnson looks like he would have been a terrible fit for the culture of this organization. Sometimes people just don't fit. What I love about the Joe Whitt hire is that he was the Cowboys' plan B for DC, which just makes it even sweeter for us. I will say this, Blood Clot, it was edited. What you wrote the first time, I saw it pop up as a notification on my phone. I loved it. And I just need you to know that. That's just going to be between you and me, Blood Clot. Okay. So next time, when you were speaking with your chest like you did the first time, keep it there. I love that. And then we go ahead, and this is the one that ended up getting edited. Blood Clot replies to his own comment with a little bit more. Ben Johnson might be a good OC, but he doesn't have any leadership skills. Imagine texting a team that's about to interview you because you're too chicken shit to call them. A person that's afraid of confrontation isn't someone you want leading your team. Then passive aggressively throws shade at the team after the fact. Dodged a bullet there. That is the one that got edited, where the first time I read it, burst out laughing. It was great. So again, Blood Clot, just let it fly. Nailed it.
Maybe that's the thing that we were talking about, is like when you listen to Adam Peters's attributes, it didn't necessarily sound like Ben Johnson was that fit for that. I was thinking about something as you were talking about as he was talking about the coordinator stuff. Well, whatever. Yeah. I don't. There is something that I was even just thinking about when it came to the too many cooks thing, and realizing as far as the ego thing and hearing these guys talk so far, the main through line that you can see, and this is why I guess the second chance coaching staff made sense. Almost all these guys that are coming here are not too far removed from a very humbling experience. The Eagles collapsed down the stretch. Dan Quinn is known as 28-3 guy. And then they got their asses handed to them by the Green Bay Packers at the end there.
Which Kliff Kingsbury Joe Whitt there. Yeah.
Kliff Kingsbury was looked upon as a failure as far as a head coach and what happened with Kyler Murray, even though he's still collecting bank. He won in the long term. There is an idea that I think everybody here needs to be humble. And I think that they believe that to a certain degree and are able to work with each other and kind of remove the egos. You get yourself, you find a through line theme. And if everybody has the same chip on their shoulder, it makes it so much easier.
I like that. I like that aspect of it. I hadn't thought about it from the humbling perspective, and just getting that maybe like hungry coaches in the room together with a point to prove and having that chip on their shoulder. I think that's very cool. We go over to Monty Byers. Shout out, Monty. Love the show, guys. That was cool reading my comment. Thank you. Well, Monty, we read all the comments. Unless there's like a very long thread on one of the comments, like we did with Patriot Clips, for example, just because we wanted to get the overall point in. But if you have your own standalone comment, we will read that whole thing, buddy. So keep commenting. We appreciate it.
I comment for that.
Go over to, we go over to King of PKF, who was the person going back and forth with Patriot Clips. And once again, greatly appreciate the comment. Shout out. James Conner looked great in Arizona for his level of talent. And while I don't love Brian Robinson like others, I think he's comparable talent-wise. By the way, Arizona was top 10 in rush attempts for like 3 years, I believe. Appreciate the comment there. I still want to look at the numbers and see what percentage of rush attempts Kyler Murray accounted for. But being top 10 is being top 10. That is it. The point stands. Facts of fact.
No, it's however you get there. It's how you fucking get there, right? It's the same way that when people look at Lamar Jackson, they want to separate his rushing yards from his passing yards. It's yards down the field, motherfucker. Like, let's go. Like, what does it matter?
Yeah, what does it matter? And then we go over to Great Brit 6801. This is maybe my favorite comment, and you'll know why in a moment. Dan Whitt Cliff. That's what was written. Why it's my favorite comment is because there's a translate to English button, thinking that it was something else. And if you do, in fact, choose to translate it, it's then White Cliff. That's what we've got, like Cliff, like a cliff, white instead of wit. And Dan turns to then. I just enjoyed that Google looked at that and said, you know what? We can translate this for you. But it's Dan Whitcliffe is the comment from Great Brit 6801. Yes.
Whitcliffe.
Say that one more time.
Nothing. Sorry, I was starting to like do this
American
voice. It was kind of racist.
Just do it one more time.
Dan Whitcliffe.
And maybe that's how it was supposed to be done. Anyway.
Dan Whitcliffe.
Okay. Just
he is the football coach. A god. We will all hail Dan Whitcliffe.
I will
of the
take
Commander Tribe
full
off the
responsibility
Potomac.
for that. We go over to Jess Anto 3438. Shout out Jess. What the hell did I just watch? I don't know if he was referring to what you just did or maybe the presser. Was that a Washington coach answering questions from reporters with well thought out responses and decisive answers? No word vomit or salad? No, we need to look at the tape and get better without actually explaining how? No long circling responses that do not answer shit? I'm not sure what to make of this. Great show as always, guys. I'm male, by the way. I don't know if that changes K-Dot's
Oh, Jess.
wanting to marry you.
My bad.
But okay, it does. I don't live in the DMV, and my friends who were Washington fans all moved out of state, hence the long drawn out comments. I don't have anyone to talk to about this team. I'm still laughing at the marriage thing. I don't have anyone to talk to about this team, so this is a great opportunity for me to express my thoughts. We'll keep the comments coming, Jess. We love them. As far as Quinn, what an excellent hire. I was impressed with his energy, self-awareness, introspective nature, adaptability, and his intelligence. I'm going to continue with this comment in a moment. I do think that we do this thing where we sort of look at somebody and determine their level of intelligence or introspection and stuff like that. And I think some people got caught up with that in Dan Quinn, because once you do hear him speak, it's like, dude, this guy knows what the fuck he's talking about.
He did say irregardless.
Did he? Oh, and he also called what was it? Perpetuity was a UCLA word. Do you remember that?
Yeah, he's like, oh, I'm clearly not the smartest guy in this franchise.
To counter what I literally just said. Anyway, I'm going to reread that. As far as Quinn, what an excellent hire. I was impressed with his energy, self-awareness, introspective nature, adaptability, and his intelligence. It wasn't an EB presser either. EB always gave me snake oil salesman vibes. And let me tell you, I bought all of it. I know I bought all of it. I think you were wary, but I was like,
you're
right,
because this is bringing back because I was like, hey, does EB remind anybody else of the dude at work that just keeps talking?
And I was like, yes, and I love it. Anyway, so we go to This Is Not Rivera 2.0. Ron did the same thing Gruden and Allen did, which was bring their buddies over from a one-hit wonder team and try to replicate it. Quinn's defenses have always been excellent, and I believe Joe Whitt Jr. is long overdue to run it. With the current secondary we have, I believe he can polish them up. People forget about Derek Forrest and how good they were playing for Chris Harris, former DB's coach. This hire has probably saved Benjamin St. Juste, Quan Martin, and Emmanuel Forbes' careers. While I hope they retain Fuller and Curl, Percy Butler, might be a lost cause. I was leaning towards Anthony Weaver, but the secondary does need more attention than the defensive line. Amen. I don't know if KDOT knows this. Maybe interested in this part, KDOT. Raheem Morris called Washington and notified them that Atlanta made him an offer. Yep. He wanted our job more than he wanted to go to Atlanta, meaning our job was attractive and there were other directions they could have gone. The Kingsbury hire is the intriguing one, drawing all the attention, and rightfully so. The national media has already declared that Caleb is coming to DC. What they fail to realize is that Washington interviewed the Bears assistant GM, Ian Cunningham, twice. Was that solely for gathering information, a legitimate candidate, or both? Regardless, Washington already has some idea on how Chicago will operate moving ahead. What I do know is that we hired a quarterback whisperer for an offensive coordinator. That's all I care about with the lack of QB development this team has had for what seems like an eternity. We hired a guy whose system any three of the top prospects can play well in quickly. Not to mention the current quarterback on the roster knows it like the back of his hand. Once again, that's the Phil Longo connection in the air raid offense. Not only is Kingsbury getting paid from the Cardinals until 2027, prompting him from not leaving to become a head coach, he's reportedly said he doesn't want to become one. Time will tell with that. But to have him locked in for 3 years as an OC without getting poached is excellent. To run his offense to the full potential will require a ton of work to the offensive line, and I think Quinn will mask and contain what coaching deficiencies Kingsbury does have. I could not be happier with the way this is panning out. Thanks again, guys. Appreciate the comment there, Jess. As always, I think very well thought out, and plenty of reason for optimism there, K-Dot.
No, 100%. I agree with almost all of it. And they actually, like, when you think about like the Brian Johnson hire right now, right? If we're talking about a group of guys that believe in second chances, The idea if Kliff Kingsbury gets poached to be a head coach next year, it means we had an amazing season. So everyone should be happy if that's the case, right? But then I'd also say if that is the case, I think Brian Johnson does a better job the second time around than he did the first time.
Same sort of deal. Actually, almost mirrors a number of situations that we've talked about in terms of getting that second chance and doing it right the second time around. So that was the comment mailbag. This was District Divided, a DC sports podcast. More specifically, a Washington Commanders podcast. Thank you guys so much for listening to today's episode, recapping the Jason Simmons hire, recapping the Brian Johnson hire, and our Super Bowl predictions. We hope you enjoyed the episode. If you did, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell, comment as you always do. We read all of them. And K-Dot,
share this shit.
Please share this shit. We greatly appreciate you guys. We hope you enjoyed the Super Bowl, and we will catch you on the other side of it. Until then, take it easy. After the pod begins right now. I'm just glad we got through the episode because the coughing I was doing before the episode began, K-Dot can speak to it. Man, oh man. But we pulled it together. We did it. We did it.
I will say this episode felt like the least prepared I was for an episode in the last month.
It's
hard to find some of the stuff on these.
That's exactly it. So when you're talking about Dan Quinn, there's plenty of information out there.
Right.
When you talk about Kliff Kingsbury, former head coach in the NFL, plenty of information there. Joe Whitt Jr., there's actually a decent amount of information, but a little less because he's not as well known a name. And then you get to Jason Simmons, then you get to Brian Johnson. Brian Johnson's only 36. So, I mean, that's another thing that people maybe don't even know, but there's less information on these guys. So it's a bit more difficult. It's also, I can't remember the last time we had like specific pass game coordinators or that I can recall. Like, so it feels like a different structure as well. Maybe we did. And I just like, not sure who.
I was talking to somebody the other day. What's that? The Mandela effect. Passing game coordinators was not a thing 5 years ago. Fuck this shit. It's just not. It's horse shit.
Is this a trend you want to buck?
No, I'm not saying it's. I'm just saying that like the what you were talking about earlier, which is you just need people in the building.
Yeah,
I think that's what this case is. They made up something because like it's. I don't recall. Everyone has these fucking titles now. How many assistant head coaches are there now compared to what it used to be?
Oh, yeah, the titles don't mean anything. Everything's changing. We're positionless players in certain sports and stuff like that. Now we're just like, hey, whatever. This is your title, but you're here.
Right.
And I think that's the most important thing.
Well, here's the thing. I'd say the most important thing for me right now, if I'm looking at all these fucking titles, if they're giving one guy passing game coordinator, my concern as far as the Kliff Kingsbury office, well, a lot of it, you know, would be really important. Who's the run game fucking coordinator, right? Like,
we listen to Patriot clips. We're not running the fucking ball. It's over.
Well, if they go and they grab somebody out of like the zone run, like Mike Shanahan, it doesn't necessarily work in the air raid completely.
Running backs
coach,
you're
asking.
Mike Shanahan.
That
no, we already got Jennifer. We got Jennifer King still, yeah.
Well, I was wondering
I didn't even check actually.
I was actually wondering if EB would do it.
Well, EB apparently is out helping the Kansas City Chiefs against the Baltimore Ravens.
Which I'm surprised. I love it. I love it. I think
it's great for him. And it was great for the Chiefs. Clearly it worked. They won.
Yeah, I like it. I like EB helping out with those guys. And I don't give a shit. Like he wasn't, but he was the run game coordinator in Kansas City, right? At one point, he was assistant head coach, run game coordinator.
Former running back. Yeah. You know, so which is why it was so interesting when he threw the ball more than anybody else this year. It was like, all right, I guess, but you would think that he would be able to put himself in the running back shoes to be able to help the running back out, especially with an offensive line built to run.
Built to run with running backs that are never being utilized properly. Which to me is going to be one of those things that I'm calling it right now. I don't think Gibson's back next year.
Okay.
And I do think he's a Pro Bowler somewhere else.
See, and this is where we're getting into the coaching malpractice, or malpractice may be too strong a word, but just like not understanding the personnel. I could easily see that too, because whenever Gibson has gotten the ball in space, like he's been really, really good. And it felt like we just did not do it enough. Like it was very tough. Brian Robinson, by the way, also really good in space. Like he's a very good running back to me.
That's the thing is you get all these that's the other thing that annoys me as far as like that trend with the offense coordinator thing. Where it's like, tell me if I'm wrong. A lot of times the young hot offense coordinator is somebody who just understands a particular scheme.
Yeah.
And they're just bringing the scheme alongside with them, right? And then beyond that, the offense coordinators that I gave a shit about were the ones that said, all right, I don't give a fuck who the cast is. We're going to play around the strengths of the guys that we have and try to get the best out of this dude or build an offense around X player, right?
Yeah.
I never ever I've never felt the last time I saw that happen in Washington was 2005 or 6, where it is that even though from a personnel standpoint it was the wrong move, but Clinton Portis, they built the offense around what it is they were going to do with Clinton Portis. Even though if you're
Right.
really looking at it, you would have never traded for Clinton Portis knowing what kind of running scheme you were running because he had to put on 20 fucking pounds in order to work under the running scheme.
I also just wanted to keep Champ Bailey. I still remember that trade, and I was like, we're trading Champ. I mean, Portis ended up being great over here. Like he ended up having multiple 1,000-yard rushing.
I don't regret it at all. But if you're going to be really, really fair and just keep it fair, the Broncos won that trade.
They did. Of course they did.
But I love Clinton Portis, and I never wanted to have it any other way. But but that's the thing is like if I'm looking at that, right? You know who was a better fit for Joe Gibbs' offense? Stephen Davis.
Yes, I love Stephen Davis. Remember we had Stephen Davis, Brad Johnson, man. That was a fun team. It was a good team. I enjoyed it.
So I've been watching Netflix has their new NASCAR show, which is basically like the NASCAR version.
That's their Drive to Survive. Okay, go ahead.
I completed it yesterday. It's only 5 episodes, really mad easy. But
okay.
One of the things is that one of the biggest owners in all of NASCAR is Joe Gibbs Racing.
Right.
So seeing Joe Gibbs in every episode has been great. I fucking love seeing Joe every time he's there. But what was blowing my mind was when Joe Gibbs came back in 2004.
Mm-hmm.
And I still remember, I still have the newspaper articles from when it was announced and everything he was coming back. It was only 11 years since him and his staff was there winning a Super Bowl with us. It was 11 years. It's been 21. It's been 20 years. Like when I'm looking at Joe and I'm seeing him age, and I'm like, how old were you when you came back? He was 63, which he would not be anywhere near the oldest coach, but it was thought about like this old relic is coming back into the league. And it was like, he was only 63. Like,
well, yeah, I guess because the Super Bowls were 83, 87, like, so they were probably just thinking,
wasn't that long
we're
ago.
so far removed, and now he's back. And he all things considered, did quite well, even in his second stint.
No, that to me is the most success. I think that's the success that those teams had is underrated, which is why I still go back to, I would have promoted Greg Williams. I know it would have probably ended horrifically, but I thought the way of continuity for that team would have been to elevate Greg Williams. But there were issues with Joe, right? Joe comes in 11 years after the last Super Bowl, and what does he do? He hires all of the same staff that he had 11 years ago. And the game had changed quite a bit.
Right. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. Yeah.
No, I was going to change the topic. So go ahead.
Yeah, no, change the topic. It's fine.
Well, what I was going to ask you was, I can't remember, speaking of Gibbs, other coaches, who was the DC? Oh, and you had mentioned Greg Williams. Who was the defensive coordinator with Mike Shanahan?
Haslett.
It was Haslett?
Haslett was here.
It was. Yes, it was. Because then when we transitioned over to Jay Gruden, we kept Jim Haslett. There was a connection there, which made me think Jay Gruden was going to be hired. Mm-hmm. Then Jay Gruden was hired. I just remember listening to, I think it was Kevin Sheehan on 980. And they were talking about which coordinator to get rid of if you had to pick one between Kyle Shanahan and Jim Haslett. And I remember looking at the numbers, being like, so I guess the knock on Kyle was he was a bit, maybe RG3 wasn't working out or something, this post-injury, of course, the next year. And they're like, but the offense was still, the ranks were still very good. And I just remember being very confused by that conversation. You see Jim Haslett's defensive ranks. It was just like, I don't know. So just speaking to your
what year,
Greg, this is 2014, 2015, something like that.
All right. So that's the thing is like, we got to think back to what happened during that time. Right. So, and I'm just Haslett was here from when Shanahan started, you're right, through 2015, when he gets fired for Joe Barry. Because at that point, everybody wanted Haslett's head.
Right.
this is in the aftermath of the RG3 debacle.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone in town is fucking upset about that. You remember Kyle Shanahan was also a dude that would let certain shit fly in the media.
He was immature.
So like there is an aspect of like when we were looking at that, then you got to remember also that those defenses in that era. There were some good people on those on that defense. Like and there were like I mean, I'd take that defense over the defense we got now. But
I would take any defense we've had over the defense we have now, based purely on production. It's insane.
We're looking at production, right?
Yeah. No, in terms of talent, I do think we have some talent on this defense.
We do. But it was just like I was always a little annoyed. I liked Hazlitt overall. I remember getting annoyed by him at the end. It was just like there was so much.
Never did anything for me.
There's so
I was
much
just
I can
speaking
take
to like I wanted to promote Kyle Shanahan at the time. I was like, if Mike leaves, I'd still like to keep Kyle, but this is probably A-Train talking at the time, right? Because he didn't care about the immaturity. He was like, A-Train's immature too. That's perfect. I'll get a head coach that mirrors my personality, but I love the offense.
But remember, the whole town was split because there was I think everybody in the grand scheme of things will think about.
That's what I was saying.
Mike Shanahan, for the most part, I think most people were on his side. But even the Albert Hainsworth shit got to a point where it was just like, is there an adult in the room? Like, what the fuck are we doing?
Yeah.
Like when the whole physical shit and all that, it was just like, what? Then you remember there was the whole switching from the 4-3 compared to 3-4 switch.
Yeah, oh my
there was
God,
like,
dude.
There was so much bullshit that was happening during that entire era. So there was like, it wasn't all sunshine and fucking roses, man. And I was listening to Kime a few days ago, and he was ranking. He was who was he talking to? I forget who he was talking to, but they were ranking the coaching press conferences since they got here.
Oh, cool.
And then from there, how much of the guys, which ones left you from the press conference feeling excited compared to which ones did you know immediately was a fucking train wreck? And it all checks out. Like everybody remember Jim Zorn. The moment that happened, everybody was like, this is not going to happen. This is not going to go well.
Well, that's because we initially brought him on, not as head coach, offensive coordinator. And then we're like, actually, he's going to be head coach. Like that was one of the most bizarre. I don't remember any other franchise doing that.
I'll never forget where I was when they announced that Zorn was the head coach. I'll never forget it. My mom had just bought a new car. And my thing was that like, after you drive the car for a few weeks, I broke the car in. My whole family would give me the car to break in. So like I'll take it for a long drive. I'm gonna run it kind of hard, do whatever, break the car in. So I'm in her car and I'm driving over the Eastern Shore.
Yeah.
I'm literally gonna drive to fucking Rehoboth to go give me some boardwalk fries and a milkshake. Like that's what I was gonna do. I'm in bumper to bumper traffic because they're doing construction on the Bay Bridge. I'm fucking irate, just pissed. And I'm listening to the radio. And my phone goes off and it's Brendan. He's like, Zorny, baby. I'm like, yeah, Zorn is the offensive coordinator. What are you doing? He's like, no, he's your head coach. And I'm like, what? So fucking going through the stage trying to find 980. It's all fucking staticky. I'm on 106. I'm just trying to find. And they announce it. I'm like, I start fucking screaming and yelling and punching the steering wheel. This is a fucking embarrassment. How the fuck did they let this happen? And Brennan's just fucking cackling into the phone. And I ended up driving to Delaware still. And I remember being so angry with my boardwalk fries when the goddamn I'm by myself. I didn't even call anybody to meet me because I was going to call a friend out there that was going to meet me out there. I didn't even call her. I was like,
you needed space.
I sat on a fucking bench looking at the ocean with my goddamn boardwalk fries. She's eating me like, this is a fucking, because you remember Steve Spagnuolo said no to us.
Right.
He said no. He was like, I'm going to stay in New York. We're good. Jim Fossil was the only dude that wanted the job, but it was the second time.
And the fans revolted.
It was a rough time, man. And then what? Maroon and black, and it was like,
oh my Lord.
But then we started 6-2, which
I know,
which goes to my point. Which goes to my point. That team made the playoffs 2 out of 3 fucking years. There was what ended up happening was there was a threshold between the leftovers from the Gibbs era. Meaning, all right, Zorny time.
Got you.
And it killed all the
Horny
momentum.
for Zorny.
And it went...
I tell you what, it was weird because I remember at a certain point, everyone sort of knew that Jim Zorn, like, it was pretty
Great
quick.
guy, terrible coach.
Great guy, terrible coach. But then all the leaks were happening because remember, 980 was owned by Dan Snyder.
Yep.
So there was that whole thing too, where like the owner owns the radio station. So that was interesting. And so you get all these leaks coming out about Jim Zorn and painting him as this completely incompetent figure, and with the hope that he would resign so that they could save some money. And I just remember Zorn sticking it out, being like,
I always respected him.
And I respected him for that. Exactly. And I think every fan was like, don't resign. Make them fire you because you deserve to get paid. This wasn't your fault.
It wasn't your fault. You should have never got the job.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
They fucking scrambled.
Oh, man, what a time. Dude, we got to be the only franchise. Like, insane.
It happens for other ones. It happens for other ones.
But when we talk about commander stuff, when we talk about hiring pass game coordinators, when we talk about just having adults in the room, like that is the context for us, is all that stuff. We had a owner that owned a radio station that would drop leaks whenever he basically wanted it to happen. They weren't allowed to speak against him. They're like, oh, it must be the general manager. I must be the coach. Like, I don't know what it is. Like, it was just the dumbest. It was like, guys, please just say it. And they couldn't. Like, that's what we were dealing with. And so now having an aligned vision, or at least having the appearance of an aligned vision, of course we're going to be excited. Of course we're going to be pumped. Like, there are levels to this shit, K-Dot.
Yeah. No, there are definitely levels to it. But I would just say that, like, if we're keeping it a buck.
Please do.
I was super excited when Ron came. And his press conference to me was pretty good.
Well, I felt like press conferences always tend to be good. And so it's important to keep that even with the Dan Quinn stuff. So we'll see.
Marty Schottenheimer, loved it.
Well, I think he's actually a good coach.
Yeah, that's fair. But loved it. But loved it. And then, of course, Dan Quinn has never topped, for me, Joe Gibbs coming back. But that was just excitement on a whole nother level. But even with the Joe Gibbs thing, you knew, all right, he's hiring back all these dudes from the glory days. And you got what?
Joe Bugle. Shout out.
Yeah, rest in peace, Bugles. Love that man. He comes back to be what, offensive line coach, because then who is the offense coordinator? Don? Yeah. And then he's still running a 1986 offense.
It was awesome.
So then they bring in Al Saunders.
Yep.
And Al Saunders is like, yeah, I mean, I put together the offense in Kansas City and stuff. I could try to do what you have. But the personnel is just not the same for what it is you have.
Man. What a hilarious history we've had in the last 20 years. It's been fun. Like there's definitely been moments of fun, but man, oh man, in terms of competence, like I think that's why you're probably so excited about Joe Gibbs, is because there was actually a winning pedigree, and not just a winning pedigree, it was a winning pedigree here. And so there was that added element.
I think he did a good job here.
He did do a good job. We're in agreement.
Yeah,
but just that speaks to the level of excitement. And he actually go ahead.
The year in between, remember Portis goes down.
Yeah.
Like
Liddell Betts was decent.
Yeah, but he was not Portis. Like
but Liddell Betts was good.
That team to me, yeah, I think that Gibbs needed some more time to do this, that, and the other, and I knew it was way too much for him by the end of it. And look, if we're looking at the pantheon of great coaches and everything, I don't think you can. To me, what he's done in NASCAR is a package deal.
Interesting.
All right, but here's the reason I say this, right, is that name another coach that went to an entirely another sport and won the championship.
I don't think I know enough to be able to do that.
Joe Gibbs won 3 Super Bowls with 3 different quarterbacks, and then went to NASCAR and won multiple championships. Who has that resume?
Man's a born winner. Let's get him to coach the Wizards.
I don't think we're ready for that.
Oh, I thought that's where you were going with that. Sorry. Please continue.
Nah. Let Joe be Joe down there. He's got a good team. Chris
seems
happy. And all those guys. He's good.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, yeah, but he's also the amount of fucking loss he's experienced in the last fucking 4 years. True. Jesus. I love Joe. I will always love Joe. I'm an atheist at heart, but that man makes me want to be a Christian. I'll admit it.
Joe's awesome.
He's a good dude.
Anyway, we'll end on that just because of the hard stop, but we appreciate you guys. Enjoy the Super Bowl. Catch you guys next week. Until then, take it easy.
Bye.
In DC, we're just hoping that you listen.